You are listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 28. Today is all about finding and practicing gratitude amidst the chaos that can often be life. My guest has experienced many struggles in her life and has come through some pretty dark times to find happiness and joy in the little things. She is a true inspiration, and I cannot wait for you to hear her story. So grab yourself a cup of organic tea, get comfy, and let's get to it. You are listening to Love Unplugged, a podcast focused on love in all its forms. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon, hopeful romantic and founder of Project Love. I found that too often love is set aside or taken for granted, and we tend to forget how to care for ourselves and our important relationships in the day-to-day chaos. So let's slow down, tune in, and begin our journey of rediscovering love. From honest heart-to-heart conversations with real couples and knowledgeable guests to deep dive reviews of new products and services that will help you feel beautiful inside and out. If you're looking for relatable advice or wanting to be inspired by real-life love stories, you've come to the right place. Without further ado, let's get to it. Hello, friends. Today I am joined by Jessica Marola-Hugh, founder of Catalyst Marketing, mother of 3 with a baby girl on the way as well, entrepreneur and wife of a brain trauma survivor. Today is all about finding and practicing gratitude in the day-to-day chaos that is life. Jessica has such a unique, inspirational story, and I cannot wait to dive in and learn about her journey and what she has learned from her experiences. So welcome, Jessica. I am so honored to have you as my guest, and I'm so excited to learn all about your story. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit about who you are.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me on tonight. I'm super excited, yeah, thanks for the introduction. I'm really pumped. So I'm Jessica, for those of you that don't know me, and I do run Catalyst Marketing, which is a social media and public relations studio. I'm a mother of 3 boys, and yes, we are expecting our first little girl just 22 days away now. And my husband is a brain trauma survivor. So there is a very unique aspect to our lives. I was originally actually born in South Africa to a very Italian family. And we then immigrated to Europe, where I got to grow up and learn all sorts of different languages and experience culture and different elements of history that, you don't quite have here in Canada. And we immigrated here when I was about to turn 10 or so. And so we've been here for 20 plus years, which has also been so exciting. Canada is definitely my home, and I'm proud to be Canadian at that. So, yeah.
Do you ever go back?
I do.
Yeah.
Never to South Africa. And the main reasons for that are safety. There's a lot going on in that part of the world. And although all of my dad's family and extended family live there, because we've been away for so long, it would make it really hard to just travel safely in a country that's, kind of ridden with crime and all kinds of different, political issues. But in Europe, I've gone back quite a few times, and I'm excited because next year, I am actually going to be introducing my kids to Europe for the first time. So doing a little bit of a whole tour, everything from the UK to Belgium, Germany, Italy, Portugal. So we're going to go see family wherever we can.
Wow, that sounds like quite the trip for your kids.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty amazing. They have yet to travel. So this is going to be a huge learning opportunity for them, and to experience sort of like family as they never have before, because of course, culture in Europe is very different. So, everything from, touring different places to food, to just people. And I find Europe to just be friendly on a different kind of level. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I'd love for you to share what a day looks like in your life with everything that you have going on. I'm just so curious. So what does it look like from start to end?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yes. There's a story to tell there. Usually speaking, and this is pretty amazing, my 9-year-old is the first one up in the morning. So he's the one who kind of gets me up, which is cool. He's up at about probably 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I can hear him scrambling his eggs in the kitchen and prepping his lunch. And that's what kind of gets me motivated to get going. He'll actually come in the room and he'll say, "Good morning, Mom," and give me a kiss. And that's kind of like my cue to kind of get the train going. The 4-year-old, funny enough, has been sleeping in. So it's been a bit of a blessing because he's given me time to prep myself prior to me having to get him all together. So I'll usually sort of get all of his stuff ready and breakfast for the family. Hubby usually it's his coffee, 2 eggs, toast. And then I'll kind of run down through a checklist of items mentally with myself. And then we have this really great sort of board where I'll plot out chores for the day for the kids. I have this sort of go-to agenda where I write down all of the things that I need to accomplish, whether they're on the personal side or the business side of things. And once all the kids are kind of out the door, that's when I dive right into basically business, answering emails, going to meetings, working on projects. And then interestingly enough, as an entrepreneur, there is so much flexibility with your schedule that, I manage with all of that going on in business to go to doctor's appointments and run errands and essentially manage the household all at once. And it's daily. There's something in each kind of category daily that I'm tackling.
I think you also own a farm. That's correct, right?
Yeah, that's right. So when we actually moved 3.5 years ago from Cloverdale to the Sunshine Coast, we decided to cooperatively with my parents get a piece of land, essentially. And so we have 8.5 acres. As part of the daily routine, there is chicken feeding and chicken managing. And so we have about 22 chickens. Yeah, it's pretty amazing because that's essentially where our breakfast comes from every morning. So we're out there collecting eggs, feeding them, talking to them. Many of them escape at any point in the day. So then you're kind of chasing after chickens. So if you can imagine, I'm in quite literally my business attire and I'm hiking out into a muddy sort of field trying to scoop up one of these birds, or they're in the driveway and I'm backing out and you're trying to avoid not hitting the chicken. So it's kind of, it has really some pretty interesting moments. And they're funny. They're curious. They'll peck at your stilettos and they don't care. They'll just kind of come at you and they expect you to feed them. And they add a little bit of oomph to your day,
That's crazy. So to the business, what inspired you to start this business? Was it always a dream of yours to run your own company and being an entrepreneur?
That's a great question. To be honest, I didn't really ever think that I would become an entrepreneur starting out. I just sort of graduated high school and I was exploring, my possibilities and traveled and came back and really started out as any other person would, which is just, taking on a 9-to-5 job. And what I gravitated towards was very high level positions as a result of the way that I was building out my skill set. So I ended up working in infrastructure. So construction, building bridges and highways and major dams in different places in BC. And I became the executive assistant to an area manager for Western Canada for an infrastructure company. And it wasn't until I realized that the 9-to-5 was wearing at my soul and that a lot of the corporate politics really didn't allow women to move well in the organization, and being mistreated actually by another female manager, that I decided that I really needed to think of whether or not I was going to continue this journey. I'd actually had my second baby at the time and, he was only 1.5 and I was working full time downtown Vancouver and commuting to and from to Surrey. And I just thought to myself, I'm getting up so early, spending so much time trying to get to this job, but I'm so unfulfilled. And it didn't happen for me until I went to this networking get together one night where I was approached by this gentleman in the room, and he said, I've been watching you on social media. And I mean, Facebook was like so new back then. Instagram was like a blip on the radar. And he said, we've actually been friends online for quite some time. And the way that you write, the way that you post about things, I see that you have this ability to communicate with people and to really build relationships. And he said, would you consider potentially mentorship? And that was my first taste of just kind of independently being hired to do something where I didn't have to sit in an office and I didn't really have to take orders from anyone. I kind of just created this role for myself. And so that's when it really became the dream. I saw the opportunity, I saw the freedom, and I was like, I'm going to do this.
Awesome. What did you struggle with most when you started your business?
Yeah. Wow. Struggles. The largest or the biggest hurdle for me has always been self-worth. I've had a really tough time. Believe it or not, you wouldn't see it on the outside, but self-worth has actually been one of my greatest battles in life in defining who I am as an entrepreneur and being able to ask for what I'm worth. I price myself well under any typical sort of service provider in my field for years. I just wasn't even able to ask. I played so small because I thought that people would judge me by, my vivaciousness, by the way that I sort of approached life and business, or my weight, because I've always been like a very curvier girl. And, I knew, or I have known that I always stick out in the room because I seem to be the bubbliest one. And I always thought that a real woman is more meek and demure, and she's skinny, and she, has this vibe about her. And I had this weird imposter syndrome and self-worth issue. And then finally, I just had to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't really living. I was just playing small.
Now, was this triggered through starting your business, or have you always struggled with that your entire life?
I think I've actually struggled with it my entire life. I think high school is when I really started to notice that I developed a little bit faster than other girls. I communicated differently. I was always very eloquent, and I was the top of all my classes, and I had this ability to get along with just about anyone, but I was still very much part of the unpopular group because, again, I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. And I didn't look like other girls. I had, not to be too descriptive, but I just kind of had boobs before anyone else. And a lot of girls were triggered by that. They would think that, oh, you're going to steal my boyfriend, or that I had some kind of diabolical plan, and so I was often bullied. Friends even would just kind of behave differently towards me. A lot of it due to the physical, right? Never about the emotional side of things. Because I find that I'm still a great friend regardless of what I look like. I've always been a giver and a lover and always there for people when they need me. So, but my friendships sometimes very much were based on well, you look a certain way, so we're only going to hang out with you at a certain time of the day, or we're only going to invite you to certain parties. It stung and it stuck with me. And I think that's what followed me into business as well.
How have you overcome that though? Now that you've started your business and you're going to have to deal with those types of emotions because now you're running a business that is going to be impacted by those types of beliefs. Mm-hmm. So how have you dealt with that and navigated through it?
I honestly realized that it actually didn't matter. That at the end of the day, no one was actually worried about that as much as I was. And to be honest, I was actually creating more of the divide between myself and others, because that was the preconceived idea that I was bringing into any kind of relationship. And so I literally turned it off one day. And I decided that if my weight was such an issue, I was going to go to the gym and I was actually going to take control of my life. And I did. I lost, oh my gosh, I think it was well over 50 pounds in like a 3-month period. And it wasn't even like, like a starvation kind of thing. I wasn't trying to starve myself or anything. I just decided I was going to eat healthier and I was going to spend more time reading my Bible and I was going to spend more time exercising and I was going to do things that made me feel good. And there was a visible change. Like I remember people connecting with me and going, there's something different. Something's happened. They could tell the wall was finally down. And ever since then, it hasn't been a problem. And it's like God just took it away. He just was like, I'm taking this from you. And it was amazing.
I love that you took ownership over it, because people not often they realize that you're the only person that can change how you feel about yourself and how things are going in your life. And it has nothing to do with what anybody else is doing or saying to you. You have to kind of take them out of the equation and focus on what you need to do to change.
100%. So many people, I'll be honest with you, will say to me, I could never do that. I could never, step outside of maybe my comfort zone. Or the big thing for a lot of women was, you go to the gym alone. And I'd get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and I go to the gym, and I wouldn't be afraid that there was a man in there, that was maybe fitter and better looking, or that there was a woman in there that, had probably been exercising for years. And that was, why she looked so good. I was there to conquer every single one of the roadblocks in my life. And it's kind of like you just have to do it. No matter how scared you are, no matter how much someone has beaten you down, no one can actually do anything to you unless you let them. And I had let the opinions of others and my own opinions of myself for so long define how I was going to approach life. And like I said, one day I just stopped and I decided I'm not doing this anymore. And we all have that same opportunity, which is amazing.
I always found that when I needed to do something and I thought about it, like I put thought into it, I would always talk myself out of it, or that negative voice would come in and tell me I can't do it, or all the reasons why I couldn't. But when you set your mind to something and you don't give yourself the time to actually think about it, you just go into action right away. It's actually not that hard.
That's right. It's the minute we think about something that we become the biggest roadblock to our progress. And it's something that entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs, talk about. They say, don't think about it.
Just do it.
Do it. And
be like Nike and just do
it. We should all have a pair of Nikes, to be honest, just for that reason. And, Richard Branson talks about this a lot, where he'd have an idea and he had no money, but he would just launch into it, knowing that with a little bit of faith and some guts and grit, that he would make it happen. And he's now, one of the most accomplished entrepreneurs in the world. But he just didn't take no for an answer. And he didn't care about what anyone thought. And if he had an idea, he would just make it happen. And so I think it's a lesson to all of us that, the more thought you sometimes pour into something, definitely, the more roadblocks you're going to create.
Definitely. Now, with everything that you have going on at home, how do you make space and time to focus on your business? So do you have any organization hacks or anything like that you put in place every day so that you can have that time?
Definitely. Yeah. One of the key things that I plug into my routine always starts at bedtime. So at bedtime, I actually do a brain dump for the next day. And I have a specific journal, a large page journal, where I write out everything that I've done today for my business and in my business. And then I write down everything that I haven't been able to tackle or need to tackle the day the next day. And then as part of my morning routine, I will actually use a giant whiteboard in my office to write down all of the goals for the day. And I'll track where I'm at with all of the projects that I'm working on. And I found this to be super effective because between phone calls, meetings, answering emails, and all the project deliverables, I would go to bed at times with such a heavy mind that I wouldn't then be able to function constructively in the morning. And so I find that brain dump in the evening, just quieting everything, turning off all technology, and then coming to my whiteboard in the morning to kind of draw a roadmap out for the day has just been one of the most amazing things for my business.
I love that because I often sit on thoughts of like what I need to do. And sadly, I will wait until the morning to plan out my day, but then it takes so long to actually do that. So then I start late and then things interrupt. So then I don't always get to completing that list and it just goes right off track. So I love that you do it the night before and you take the time to just focus on that and then you get started in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fantastic. And I would recommend it to anyone. And I love that it's called a brain dump because
yes,
it's just, you really are, you're kind of, all of those thoughts that would generally keep you up at night and that would continue to make your mind like literally overwork itself are now on paper. And it's almost like your brain goes, great. You've kind of just let go. And so it's been really fantastic. The other thing that I'm actually working on too this next year is I'm going to be setting up a really cool new board where I've actually mapped out like things like 3 to 6 month targets. And then what I'm doing is I'm actually taking pictures and uploading them into my Trello where I kind of track where I'm at also digitally. And it spurred me into now manufacturing an actual content calendar and scheduler for people on the social media side of things. So what I've started here, for myself, I'm now trying to create for others in a different way. And so it's amazing to see how those kinds of things develop over time.
I can't wait to see that because I'm so curious as to how it's going to look.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I'm just in the midst of trying to get all the different, manufacturers and designers and everything on board. And so it's going to be really neat. And I hope that people are going to love it and that it's going to add tremendous value to their lives.
I'm sure it will. So with our businesses, a lot of it requires the social media involvement. Mm-hmm. Have you struggled with any aspects of social media? Because I know for me, I definitely has, and it has definitely triggered things that were kind of lying beneath the surface that I wasn't really aware was there. Mm-hmm. So how have you dealt with all that?
Yeah. So in terms of struggles with social media, and I think this is probably one of the number one issues that we can relate to as women is like I said, that imposter syndrome. Many women have a really hard time showing up and actually taking, a photo of themselves or getting some great photography done and posting. So that was a struggle of mine. The way that I navigated that struggle was, again, I overcame some of my, issues with self-doubt and comparison to others and just went out and got photos done and started posting. So that was kind of like step one. The second thing that I find that I struggled with, even though I coach people on social media, is content. So my ability to create content for others is amazing. No issue there. But then when it came to creating content for myself, I find my mind would always draw blank. Like I was just like, what am I going to post today? And, and I thought to myself, well, if I'm designing content calendars for my clients, why am I not doing it for myself? Mm-hmm. So designing a content calendar, has now allowed me to have content go up when I wanted to, when I needed to, and I don't have to think about it, which is a huge hurdle to, sort of have overcome because you can spend so much time thinking about this stuff that you never get it done. And then the other aspect of social media that was a little bit of a struggle was, especially in starting out, was trying to figure out like, which platform am I actually supposed to be on? Where are my ideal clients hanging out? And do I need to be on like 6 social media platforms to actually reach those people? And so it's taken a like trial and error for me to kind of find that, Facebook and Instagram are really the two areas that I know that I can find clients. And then in the past 2 years, I've been using LinkedIn. And so that's been a huge business generator for me, especially because of the professional scope of the platform. So yeah, so those are kind of like the 3 sort of hurdles that I've faced. And I would say based on the workshops that I've hosted lately, I get a lot of people putting up their hands in the room that say, you know what, we're also struggling with that stuff too.
It's so funny that, the things that we're going through, we think that we're alone going through it, but it's interesting that almost every single person is going through similar or maybe the same type of experiences.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I want to know what self-love means to you with everything that you have going on.
Wow.
That's a big question. Do you have practices in place to kind of help you put time away to practice self-love or?
I think the greatest gift that I give to myself every day is time alone with me. And that time alone may look like writing down my thoughts, so a form of journaling, going on walks out in nature. We have a very unique park here called Hidden Grove, where there's a very specific type of moss that actually grows from trees. And it actually signifies that there's a very large concentration of oxygen in this forest. And I guess in some ways it's a bit of a rainforest. But there's an ethereal kind of feeling as you're walking through this place. You really do feel like you're kind of like in I don't know, it's like a little utopia. And I will just lose myself in that park. And I find it to be just the most grounding experience walking under these trees that are hundreds and hundreds of years old with this moss growing down. And then there are moments where it is really about the bubble bath. So it's locking that door, lighting those candles, putting on your favorite music, having a glass of something really wonderful to drink, and just allowing your body to release. And I think we forget as just people in general, and I do believe men should do this too, that sometimes we just need to shut the door. And sometimes we just need to ask people to give us the space we need and to be present with ourselves, because we are actually we are a person that we're communicating with daily, and we don't even realize we're communicating with ourselves. And that can be exhaustive, And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but those are definitely very simple things, but practices that I feel give me the ability to breathe and help me to reflect and help me to grow, because it's in those moments that I can actually think and go, this happened today, and maybe I didn't handle it in the right way, but I get to think about that now, and I get to maybe do things differently tomorrow, or I might reflect on where my stresses are or where my joys are. And you can't do that when you're surrounded by people. You really can't, because you're just so aware of their presence and the dialogue they're trying to create in your life, that there's no time to then dialogue with yourself. So yeah, so there's a kind of 3 things that I really like to do.
I feel like women have a tendency to give 100% of themselves to everything around them, which they often lose sight of themselves in the process. And then when you don't give enough to yourself, you don't have enough to give to someone else.
Exactly.
So it's like that domino effect, right? So it's so important to just take that time to turn things off, turn people away, and just be with yourself in whatever way makes you recharge.
Definitely. Yeah.
Have you read any books or any podcasts or anything like that that has helped you kind of emotionally or mentally, spiritually kind of recharge and kind of reconnect with yourself when you're going through difficult times?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of books, I love books. and if we're, focused on more of that recharging and just kind of spiritual and mental uplifting, for me, it's my faith. I'm super grounded in my Bible and books that align with my walk with God. And so I have very specific books that I'll actually read over and over and over again, much of it due to the context of what that book is dealing with. And a lot of it is our struggle with life, just as human beings, and that there's a hope, that we can look towards outside of ourselves. And those reminders are actually some of the most powerful that I've ever come across. And they're the reason why my day-to-day can be so easy, because I've read these books so many times that those phrases will just kind of pop out at me, and they'll be like a reminder and an encouragement. And so, I don't tend to gravitate towards self-help books or spiritism or anything like that. For me, I just like to go back to the basics of faith. And I found it to be just so peace-giving. And it's allowed me to help others as a result too.
I love that. Now, I definitely want to hear about this relationship. I want to know everything about it. So how did you guys meet?
So, believe it or not, we met online. Is that common
really
these days? I don't know. We met on Plenty of Fish. I know this is like so tongue in cheek, but I saw his photo on Plenty of Fish, and we started this conversation, and I don't know what I was thinking. This is a good 12 and a half years ago, but I said, did you know dolphins are the only ones that enjoy intimacy with each other? And again, you gotta think about where my mind would have been 12 years ago. And he thought that was the coolest thing ever. He was like, I didn't know that. That's amazing. Wow, what a great fact. And then he invited me out to coffee. And yeah, the rest is history. No, but it was very, I look back now on that conversation, I think to myself, geez, Jess, like, could you not come up with something just a little bit more creative and like not so, I don't know, out there, but it did the trick. I obviously fished him out of the ocean. And from there, interestingly enough, after our first meeting, I just knew. There was something about my husband, Jordan, who he had this really like deep sense of love oozing out of him. He didn't approach sort of connection with me in any way that tried to prove to me that he was like a man, or that, he had money, or that, he, I don't know, like just some of the male domineering kind of traits that you find present themselves in first dates. And he just kind of made me feel so comfortable about who I was. And he was so attracted to me, like not just like physically, but it was like a magnet, like two magnets just kind of like could not kind of claw themselves apart. And he loved my faith. He loved the fact that I was like very bubbly, and that, I had this ability to kind of just make everyone around feel really good. And his mom loved it. It was just this connection, right? And something that you don't find very often, And within, 9 months, we were married. So,
wow.
And we dove kind of right in. Marriage, babies, starting a life. And it wasn't until we reached the second year period in our marriage that my eyes were kind of open to the realities of life outside of this sort of really fantastical experience that I was having, with my husband. And that was the revelation in which I found out that he was actually an addict, and that he had been struggling since he was quite young with a narcotics habit. And I was thrust into the world of having to deal with codependency and bipolarism and, raising two fairly young kids, and also almost like raising a husband at the same time. And, it was funny. In all of it, there was still that love just oozing out of everything, but with this very real reality that we had struggles and that we were coming up against a bit of a monster, at the same time. And then he had a huge accident. And so that changed things even more for us.
I can't even imagine having to deal with bipolar type situations. Those are very difficult, very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Especially having 2 young children in the mix as well and having to navigate that and make sure they're safe. And also, you loved your husband. So obviously you want to be there and you want to be supportive and you want to help him and whatnot. But it's such a fine line.
Yes, it is. And you're wanting to protect your children as much as you're wanting to protect yourself. But then you realize you have a human being that you love, that you've made a commitment to, who is no different than you in terms of brokenness. It's just that their brokenness is a little bit more on the surface than it is internal. And I really had to check myself at times because I really like to sometimes play a bit of a guilt trip and control the situation in a way that suited me because I felt like, you've done this to us and, well, I'm going to treat you this way. And so there was a lot of anger. There was fear. There was a lot of me trying to be the better person. And it didn't dawn on me until we hit some pretty significant roadblocks that what my husband needed most out of anything else in this life was my love. And it wasn't until that moment that I really realized, hey, I'm actually just as messed up as you are. And I've got my pride and my issues and whatever else I'm coming into this relationship with, and just be here, for you. And it changed a lot of things in our marriage for both of us. Me just taking more of a role as a servant leader, versus wanting to be like this go-getter, domineering wife who needed to control now the situation with an addict, Yeah.
How did you deal with the emotions you must have developed, learning that he's had this issue that he's been dealing with himself that he didn't share with you before marriage, that he's been kind of withholding? Like, how did you deal with that?
I didn't. Not for many, many years. It was like a complete betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
And there was so much anger, and so much destructive sort of behaviors that kind of manifested themselves in me because of the pain that I was going through, that oftentimes I would actually just remove myself from the situation or my kids, and I would kind of just like leave him to his own devices. And it actually created a gaping hole at one point in our marriage that led him to actually have an affair. And he ended up having that affair with a very close family friend that was 25 years older than him. And for me, that was a turning point, because with an addict, they're going to find any way or means to fill their own issues, like to fill whatever it is that they're missing in their lives, or where there's inconsistency, or where there's a lack of self-love. And because I pulled away so much from the relationship during this period, being an addict again, not really thinking, for him, he just needed to find something to fill that space. And I mean, I didn't find out until it was like 9 months into this whole thing. And my reaction was what caught me by surprise. I became very humbled to the situation. I realized that in my judgment, that in my anger, in my self-righteousness, that all I'd really done was I'd withheld from him what he wanted most, which was acceptance and understanding, caring, my presence, and became a bit of a battle to rebuild and to win back the relationship that we basically had once had. And it was, I can say for sure it was an act of God, because I think I was on my knees praying day and night for a good 2 months straight that God would save my marriage. And he did. My husband basically just abandoned everything in his life that was creating a detriment to his family. And our marriage has never been better since as a result of it. And so, yeah, it's been a bit of a wild ride.
I can definitely see that. Did you guys seek counseling together? Like, what helped you get through everything, all those emotions and circumstances? And how did you get through that together and end up where you are now?
Well, because he was so closed off due to what had happened, and all people who trigger affairs will go through this period of guilt and emotional warfare with themselves, I kind of had to do much of the work. And so, yes, I was the one who found a really great counselor. I found really great information on overcoming, affairs, on the addiction behind an affair, especially if you already are an addict, how that can trigger being in that circumstance. And it took very small steps. So really working on communication where it came down to what we were each feeling in the relationship. And it would at times be my picking very specific times during the day to simply just hold his hand and going for a walk and talking through just maybe something that I was feeling in that moment or something that I was noticing that maybe he was feeling. Things that at times we had never done. It was a bit of a journey towards, I think, almost like maturity, within the context of, just the relationship as a whole. Because although we felt this immense amount of love starting out and this connection and all that kind of stuff, we never really communicated in a way as a couple that allowed us to kind of express our feelings as well. And so when we started communicating, that was kind of like when we saw a huge change, and our counselor helped us with that a lot. And sometimes instead of words, I would write things down. So I would write something down on a note for him, and I would kind of say, I'd really like to talk to you about this. If it's not a good time right now, can, we talk about it later. And then he would come and find me and we talk about it. And it just took time is really what it was. It took time to kind of get to a place where we could find safety in our connection, because with everything that had led up to that moment, I had been so focused on his addiction, I hadn't noticed that there was anything else going on. And that was also because I was, I had the blinders on and I was angry and dealing with all my issues with addiction. But yeah, having a counselor and learning to communicate daily, and then also praying together, I found that to be like amazing, because we would actually like pray over each other. There was an energy there that would just ease any kind of issue that we were having in the moment. And it was very transformational.
Wow. With the brain trauma, how did that happen? And how do you navigate life? Like, are his abilities limited? Do you have to take on the majority of things? Like, how does that all look like?
Yeah. So he was at work one day, just to give you a little bit of context, and working in the siding industry. And he gotten up onto some scaffolding, and the scaffolding fell from under him, and he hit a rock face with his head first. And so his head was basically split in two, and he broke his neck. So I get this phone call essentially in the middle of the day. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. And I'm just being told to get to the hospital as quickly as possible. Something terrible has happened. And when I get there, they're basically trying to stitch my husband back together. And in it all, he's coherent. And I'm just so thankful he's alive. But it was a progression of that moment leading into then suddenly realizing my husband had lost a part of himself, because he became very despondent, and almost like it was like we'd lost the 10 years of our lives that we just kind of built up together. And suddenly I was having to start from scratch on a lot of things, like verbal cues, emotional cues, self-care routines. When we did finally, have an argument, it wasn't an argument anymore. It was actually like this explosive, like World War III crazy fight. And I would be like, something's not right here. And so it wasn't until we kind of digged into things a little bit deeper that there was a significant brain injury, and that it was actually affecting the frontal lobe of his brain, which is our reasoning capability. And he had lost the ability to kind of reason. He'd lost the ability to kind of manage his emotions. And having been someone who already had this, addiction issue where you don't have a good buffer to begin with, that buffer was almost gone because of this. So I essentially had to go into kind of full damage control, between having to set boundaries and retrain him as I would a child, to advocating for him with all of the doctors and the individuals that were trying to, get him well again. I found the amount of compassion that I was able to bring to that situation in those moments was just so much more, than what I'd almost expected that I was capable of, because you're seeing someone that you love essentially almost like being taken away from you, and they don't even realize that it's happening. Like the complete denial. No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't do that. No, I didn't put my socks there. Yes, I can drive. And, just like little things that you're change very, very quickly when this happens. So I had to kind of become, suddenly the caregiver, the counselor, a bit of a parent at the same time. And it was draining, but it also reminded me of why I'd made the commitment in the first place within the relationship, that regardless of kind of what happens, we're in this together. We're going to get through this. And it's been, 5+ years since the injury. And because of my pushing and tugging and nurturing and coaching, he is still a very different person. Not that that's a bad thing, but he is so grown into himself as a result. And life operates very differently now in a very positive way for him as a result of it. So it's actually impacted our lives in some ways for the better.
Wow. How do you focus on the positive and have gratitude in your life given everything that you've gone through? Because honestly, a lot of people would probably fall apart quite fast having gone through that.
I think I'm reminded of the fact that there's someone that's done something for me that's even greater, and that I get up every morning to breathe the gift of life as a result of that. And that would be my 4-year-old. That's another reason why right there. That's gratitude in motion. The hi, mommy. Believe it or not, I was raised as a Christian. Again, this is total background here, but I was raised as a Christian much of my life, and I stepped away from my faith for quite some time because I was just kind of leading a different kind of life. And I thought, well, I can't be a Christian if I'm going to live my life this way. So I'm just going to unplug. And after going through all of this kind of trauma and kind of starting to reclaim my faith, that positivity and practice of gratitude really came into play when I realized what God had done for me. And I came to terms with the fact that, someone has had to die for me so that I can have an opportunity one day at this idea of eternal life. And it went so much deeper than that, because there's context to that we could talk about for hours here. But it was how that affected me that opened my eyes to everything around me in the most simplistic sort of way. Like little things that people would consider silly that I would just cry over. And it would be as simple as, my little boys in the morning greeting me and being so happy to get up with me in the morning. Or the fact that we had food in the fridge, or that there was maybe a quarter tank left of gas and it was just going to get me to where I needed to go, even though I only had $10 left in my bank account. Little things that were so impactful that it allowed me to just kind of pause at moments in my day and go, thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that practice is what made gratitude easier, because I was not focusing on everything that was going wrong. I wasn't focusing on the lady that cut me off in traffic, or the fact that the bagger at the store crushed my cilantro, or simple things like my coffee not being made right. It was more like, oh my gosh, I had the $5 to buy that coffee, and I was able to walk out with $140 in groceries. And wow, my car didn't hit the lady when she cut me off. Amazing. Thank you. So life just took on a completely different type of perspective as a result of just practicing that. And it didn't come easy. It was very hard at first because of everything that was going on. Mm-hmm. But now it's just like any moment to me is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, and I thank God for the moments when I am in a situation, and I'm so happy about it, because I'm being molded and I'm being refined, and something is happening inside of me as a result of it. And it's giving me a new set of skills, and it's, helping me to be a better person. And so, yeah, gratitude is like such a great thing.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And I love that you focus on the little things, because when people make it to be like this big practice that you have to do, they're not going to do it. But it's very simple, right? You have hot water, you have a roof over your head, you have clothes to wear, you have, $5 for a cup of coffee. It doesn't have to be too complex. It can be very simple.
Yeah. Definitely. Very simple. And I'd say to anyone listening, like, if they're wondering, where to start, it can be literally just a matter of you getting up in the morning and taking that breath, because that's been given just by taking that breath. Having one more day to live, I feel like, is likely, no matter who you are in any situation, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. If you have breath left in your lungs, I'm telling you, gosh, life is good, and we can all make the most of it. That, I think, just opens your eyes up to the possibilities that are available to you.
Totally agree. So last question, what have your experiences taught you about yourself that you may have not known before? Whether it's like raising children, 3 of them with another one on the way, having that whole situation with your husband and everything that you've learned about yourself through that.
I think I've come to realize that I'm actually a very strong person. I would often wallow in weakness and find moments of self-pity, or just, kind of like what we talked about. I'd think about things way too much. And as a result of what I've been through, I've realized that I'm actually so much stronger than that I actually have the big capacity and capability of navigating some of the most craziest situations that you can possibly think of in life. And not only are solutions always present, but that I have this ability of just being able to get through it with ease. And after all those years of having to deal with things like lack of self-love and insecurity and all that kind of stuff, I realized that it was just stuff that I would say to myself, but it was so not true. It wasn't part of the reality that really God wanted me to live. And funny enough, even in reflection of this past year and some of the things that, we've kind of experienced, it's like that realization that I am actually a very strong individual has allowed me to kind of almost catapult my business into more of a successful place. It's allowed me to navigate this pregnancy with almost complete ease, which is amazing, because my last 3 were traumatic. It's allowed me to be more selective with my friendships, to find more quality time with those that I love, little things that I was never aware could be a choice, because I just lived small. And yet there was this crazy, amazing strength inside of me that I never even knew was there. So that, I think my experiences have just taught me that I am capable, and that I'm solutions orientated, and that it doesn't matter what comes at me, I'm going to get through it, basically.
I definitely agree with that. So if anybody wants to learn more about you, where can they connect with you?
So the best places to connect with me are generally Instagram. So if people want to find We Are Catalyst Marketing on Instagram, I'm on there all the time. I get tons of DMs, post content as I want, and it's always going to be about social and how to navigate that sort of like area of business. The other place, if people are kind of curious about what Catalyst Marketing is all about, is my website, which you can go to at www.wearecatalyst.ca. And it talks all about the studio and our crew and the kind of services that, you can select if you want. And then on Facebook. So if people want more of a personalized connection with me, my personal Facebook page is The Jessica Hugh. So if you just look up Jessica Hugh, there's a picture of me on there holding balloons, kind of celebrating, finding out, who my little baby girl, or the fact that I'm having a baby girl. And so I'm more than happy to add people to my personal Facebook as well, because, I share so much more about myself on there. In terms of more personalized way. So those are kind of like the three areas that people can go and check out and then connect with me.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for taking the time to share your story with us, as well as your experiences. I am completely amazed with what you've gone through and how you've come through it the way that you are. And I'm sure that many are going to resonate with your story and be able to take away things that they can apply in their lives to get through any situations that they're experiencing as well.
Thank you so much for having me on. I so appreciate it. And as you said, I'm hoping that there is some resonance with my story. And, if people are struggling through any one of these relationship issues or business issues or self-love issues, I really do hope that they find hope in that they realize that they too are much, much stronger than they realize. And just remember to say thank you for anything in life, because just that practice alone can just change your whole perspective on things.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.